Thank you. I'm going to turn off the speaker. Good morning, everybody. Irene Pasternak here, teaching session number 4 of Strategies for Sitting. And I am recording, but recording just the speaker view, so just your voices will be on. And this morning, the goal is comfortable wrists, arms, shoulders. And I'd love to hear from you what kinds of challenges you have in those areas, because then I can tailor the lesson to match who's here.
I have carpal tunnel syndrome in both wrists. I also have it on my elbows, both. And I have arthritis on my thumbs, both. So the mouse kills me. The scrolling on iPads or tablets kills me. And I use a support for my wrist. I use the arm of the chair to support my arm, but it's not high enough, so I need to figure out what to do, probably put a pillow or something on it so that it's the shoulder doesn't rise when can you see my shoulder a little bit? So that's how I try to support the arm, the elbow, but of course it doesn't do good for my back because it raises the shoulder to a point that it shouldn't be. So
when you're at your computer, is your forearm at right angles to your upper arm, and is your upper arm just relaxed and hanging down? So you want it.
So you want, yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, but I can't today because yesterday I attended your session and I was using a pillow on my chair and now I'm sitting lower. So I need to figure out what to do for my arm.
Even a squishy pillow is better than no pillow. Getting up higher is really important, because if you have to hike your shoulder to get your hand on the keyboard, you're going to be in agony by the end of the day. Even to put a couple books on your chair to raise you up a little bit is a good thing. And we will definitely deal with all of those issues today. Yeah.
After a while, my hand falls asleep.
Your hand falls asleep, okay?
Yeah, I usually have the shoulder, neck and shoulder, and then my thumbs. I have the same thing, arthritis and
Yep.
Getting old.
Yes, getting old's no fun.
Not for sissies, right? Someone
Not for sissies, and I'm a lot older than you, Ava.
No, I know. How did you make it there, you know? Oh my gosh.
You can have arthritis without having pain. It's not necessarily a pain sentence, and we're going to talk about ways to move that that feel better on your body. Yeah. Anybody else want to share what's going on with their
arthritis in the wrists?
Okay.
I think arthritis in the shoulder, all this area right here. And sometimes it's really hard to raise my arm after working for a long time. It gets frozen.
Okay. These things can really take the joy out of the day, can't they? when things hurt. All right. What else want to share what's going on? Right. Barbara, the base of your thumb.
Yeah, some thumb and wrist, yeah.
Okay. All right. The good news is that these arm and wrist and shoulder problems are usually easier to solve for people than the back and neck ones. So the good news is things are possible. And now I'd like to give you some experience first, and then I'm going to talk about the physiology, and having a clear map of how your arm works makes a big difference in how you can keep yourself comfortable. But to start, put put your dominant hand on your thigh. So I'm right-handed, so my right hand is just resting on the thigh. And begin to slide your hand out to your knee and back. Just very slowly. And there are many, many ways to do this. And let's try imagining that your hand is leading the way. So your hand kind of crawls out to your knee and comes back. And then let's try using the torso. So you imagine your arm is paralyzed, and if you tip forward at your hip joints, see how your hand can just slide forward on your knee? So your head will come a little closer to the screen, your shoulder will come closer to the screen. Now, you could also do this by just bringing your dominant hand shoulder forward. If you twist a little bit, that pushes your hand forward. It's a little bit of a twist and a lean. And with this, you can go, you might be able to go a little further. You come down until your whole forearm rests on your leg, and then your hand begins to dangle in space out in front of your knee. When you get to that dangly spot out in front of your knee, there's a place that it just feels right to flip your palm to be palm up. So as much as possible thinking, it's like I have no arm that does anything. No muscles in the arm are working, but it's the movement of the shoulder. And then if you look up to the other side a little bit, that makes it even easier to flip the hand over. Play with that a bunch of times, trying to find where's the right place. If you try to flip the hand too early, you'll feel some tension in your wrist. And if you try to flip the hand, if you wait too long to flip it, that doesn't feel quite right either. That gets some tension up in the shoulder or perhaps somewhere else. Okay, and rest for a moment. Now, when you're flipping your hand over from palm down to palm up, you could flip it around the axis of any finger. So I could flip it around my thumb. I could rotate it around this finger, this one. Go ahead and experiment as you do this. You slide your shoulder forward, your hand comes to the end. And what's the axis that you're rotating around? And you could experiment if you rotate around different axes. Does it feel better? Does it feel worse? Where's the sweet spot that has the least tension in the hand and in the wrist? And rest. Rest, close your eyes and sense if this shoulder is beginning to feel a little different than it did at the beginning. If you measure in your mind's eye from your ears to your shoulders, has the line gotten a little longer on this dominant hand shoulder? And close your eyes, take a breath in, and see if the breath is going more to the right side or the left side of you. And remembering the things we played with yesterday with related to breath, are you in that place where the air can go into the back of you, and the front of you? And is one sit bone more comfortable on the chair? Flatter, wider? So we're now going to do a movement where your hand comes into the crease between your pelvis and your leg. And to do that, you could lead with your hand, but try leading with your shoulder and your back. So you're somehow tipping your body to be able to drag that hand up your thigh. And then begin to make this the longer movement. So you drag your hand up toward your torso, and then you push your hand by moving your shoulder and your torso. Your weight might shift to one sit bone as you bring your hand further forward and it flips upward. And pay attention to your feet, how the weight moves from foot to foot. And to your sit bones, which one gets lighter on your chair as you do this motion? Which one pushes down into the chair? And rest for a moment. Now, push your keyboard away if you have a keyboard on your table there, and put your hand resting on the counter surface. And try this same idea of moving your hand forward and backward by moving your torso. It really is all about your sit bones for keeping your hand happy. Okay. Now, if your hand was on your mouse just as it's resting there, try moving it side to side with your sit bones. And then put your hand back on your thigh and move it side to side with your sit bones while it's on your thigh. And feel the rotation that happens, that your upper arm, as your hand moves across your thigh is round, and so your hand rotates a little. And play with which finger is it rotating around. Okay. And rest. Now let your two arms hang down by your sides. You'll have to be really far forward on your chair so that they don't interact with the chair. And with this dominant arm, begin to rotate your thumb outward. And when you rotate your thumb outward, you'll feel it starts in your thumb, it goes into your wrist, then something in the upper part of your lower arm turns. See if you can find the exact moment that your elbow knows your thumb is moving. And once your elbow knows, that means your upper arm bone is beginning to be involved. So your upper arm bone rotates. And then there gets to be this moment where it goes as far as it can in the socket in your shoulder, and the only way it can go further is for your shoulder blade to slide toward your spine. So feel that moment when the shoulder blade slides toward the spine. Your whole shoulder might move backward a little. Okay. And rest for a moment there. And let's see if you can do it in the other order. So start by taking the shoulder blade toward the spine, which rotates the upper arm, and see when does it get to the elbow? When does it get to the place where the lower bones in the arm cross each other as they rotate, and your wrist gets involved, and then just at the last moment, the thumb goes. And try that a few times. seeing if you can make like at least 5 distinct steps of first I move my shoulder blade, then the upper arm bone rolls, then the elbow, then the 2 lower arm bones, then the wrist, then the thumb. And go back now and try it leading from the thumb. And which feels more powerful? If you had to do it fast, which one would you do? You know, you had a desperate need to hitchhike. You really had to get that thumb out there. All right, and rest. Rest your hands on your thighs, close your eyes, and sense for differences. There might be some differences in the way your face is feeling left and right, your neck, the shoulder, the elbow might feel lower than the other elbow or somehow different. And now put your hand back up on your surface in front of you. And begin to use your torso and your sit bones and your shoulder blades to make a little circle with your hand. And then go the other way. So this is one way of keeping your arm and shoulder happy when you're computing, is driving it from these big muscles in your sit bone. And if you need to make the motion a little bigger, let your sit bones get you close to where it needs to go, and then you could use your arm and hand to go further. But this little exercise that we've done this morning, this little exploration of with the hand moving from the sit bone, relaxes everything that you, sort of relaxes the whole system. Let's do a few of these movements with the other hand, even though the other hand we don't usually have as many problems with because we're, well, I guess typing you still are using it. So first, before you start, notice where that other shoulder is. Is it in front of your dominant hand shoulder or behind? Is it higher or lower? And begin to slide it forward. Seeing first, what do you do by default? Are you a hand leader where your hand goes first? And experiment with leading from your sit bones, that the sit bone grabs the chair, moves your torso, and that slides your hand forward. Take many approximations as you're looking for that place where you can rotate the hand up. And looking for that particular magic spot. Does it happen after your whole forearm is on your thigh? Or is your elbow still not touching your thigh? Where is that spot where it just feels right? Where's your head looking? Where's the weight on your sit bones? Which foot? Where on your foot does the weight go? Just trying to map as many parts of this movement as you can. Do you inhale or exhale as you slide your hand out toward your knee? And if you find a pattern with the inhale and exhale, try doing the opposite. And is there, even as you're doing this, some pressure in your eyes as you go down? Do you feel one eye get heavier, move in its socket a little bit? Okay. Rest for a moment. And hang this arm long by your side. Hang both arms down. And play with the rotation, starting with your thumb, wrist. See if you can sense the two bones in your arm that cross each other. And then your elbow gets involved, your upper arm bone. And when you get to the limit that the upper arm bone can turn in its socket, then you've got to move the socket by pulling the shoulder blade back and down toward your waist. And then the thumb goes further. Let's take a moment with this arm and bend your elbow and reach back towards your chair with that elbow. And feel how when you reach back, your shoulder blade comes toward the middle. Okay. So hang your arm again and rotate it and see if you can get that shoulder blade going back. I find I have to push my chest out and my belly out a little bit to get that part of the movement. And then when the hand rotates forward, my belly pulls in, things soften here. See if you can find that connection to that rotation. And rest for a moment. And now start with the shoulder blade, socket, arm bone, elbow, two bones in the forearm, wrist, thumb. Just rest with your hands on your legs, on your thighs, and see if this shoulder is coming down a little bit. The arm's feeling more relaxed. All right. So this little thing is just a quick way to drain the tension out of the arms, of connecting your arms to your body. So it's almost, Pilar, I was thinking about what you were saying earlier, of trying to support your arm so that it's supported. And when it's supported, it can't move. You can't move the whole chain. So it's usually better for the body to not have the elbow supported. Armrests can cause more trouble than they're worth. If your arms are just hanging, your collarbone, your shoulder blade, and the upper arm bone is what makes up your shoulder, and that just sits on top of your ribs. The arms hang down, and the hand, when it's neutral, is kind of drooped like this. And it's important to know where the muscles are that control your fingers. If you have your arm and you lift a finger, see if you can find where the muscle is that lifts your finger. It's way up in here in the top of the arm. And then the muscles that pull a finger down are in the bottom of the arm. And in between, there's just tendons that run through the carpal tunnel and back to the muscles. One of the things that people often do is that they cock their wrist back a little this way, like they rest their wrist on the table and you have a thick keyboard. So as soon as you cock your wrist this way, feel how it tightens the muscles right up in here. And then you make your fingers like little hammers and push down on the keys. And that bringing fingers forward tightens these muscles down here. So you end up with a battle of these muscles tight to do this and these muscles tight to do that. And you could probably, if you all try that for a moment, try it with your non-dominant hand. You bend your wrist and exaggerate that. It's like you can make it feel like your hand is a mess, right? It hurts in here, it hurts in the wrist, whatever. So sometimes when we think we have arthritis in our hands, it's because we're using our hand in this battle between the top and the bottom. So that's one thing to watch for as you're working. The other, I want to talk about the axis of rotation. And if you spin around this fourth and third or fourth finger, that's the axis that is going to be most comfortable. If you go around your thumb or your index finger, just try it and see which feels easier. As soon as you have this little extra angle in here, all the tendons that run through the carpal tunnel are crossing a sharp edge, and so they get irritated, and that's why they hurt. But if you keep your wrist in this neutral position where the line of your forearm goes right up your fourth finger, then the nerves go straight through the carpal tunnel, and they're not having to bend, and so they don't get irritated. When I was in my Feldenkrais training, we had one of the teachers who would go around as we were working with each other, because Feldenkrais is often done as a hands-on work. And she would look at us and say, short career, long career. And because we'd be holding somebody, lifting their head like this, and she'd go, short career, and then you have to find the way to lift the head by coming up from under with the hands in this neutral position. This is often the thing that gets massage therapists out of business when they don't learn how to use their hands and wrists well. And it's the same thing for those of us who type and sit at a computer all day. So the idea that this is neutral, and we don't want to do that, and we don't want to have the wrist at a funny angle. Just those things will make a huge difference in your comfort. The thumbs are, well, let's play with something with the thumbs. Which, take your thumb and touch, let's go back to the dominant hand, your thumb and your pinky. Okay. And what joints are moving to let you do that? You could use your other hand to gently ride along and feel. Feel the thumb. You can find the top joint at the thumb up in here, and then find the next knuckle down. And then there's always, in all of our fingers and toes, there's a long bone that goes, there's long bones down the fingers. And so the important joint in the thumb is this one right down here with the wrist. And for the thumb and the forefinger to come together, you could do it almost with your thumb long. Some people try to do it all from here. And try that. If you do that, see how you can feel the tension build in your wrist. But if you let the thumb fold from this lower spot. Okay, rest for a moment. With this hand, and don't lift it up like I'm just doing this to show you, but make a little motion where the fingers come together and they spread apart. And just let your arm be resting on your thigh while you do that. Now, there's there's one other misconception people have about their hands. They either map their hands in their brain from looking at the palm or looking at the back. Let's start by looking at the palm and finding where are the joints in your fingers. So there's that crease at the end joint, and then a second crease at the second joint in all the fingers, not the thumb. It doesn't have as many bones. And then there's another crease right where the end of your palm is, but there isn't a joint there. If you feel with your fingers, or you turn your hand over, turn your hand and bend at the knuckles. See how the knuckles are a good inch behind where your fingers leave? So when we bend our hands, use your other hand to help your hand move right at that knuckle. Just go through each finger in time, trying to map in your brain. Oh wow, that joint is not at the end of my palm from the palm side, it's right at the big knuckles. And now imagine that you had the mapping in your brain that you were supposed to bend at these lines on your palm. And try bending there and see how the tension just builds in your arm and in your palm. And then try folding at those joints. So just having this good map in your brain of where are the joints, where is movement possible? And how can I keep this arm neutral so that everything that goes through the carpal tunnel stays happy? Because we've got a lot of tendons in there, and it's like, you know, if you take a string and it goes around a corner, it breaks right at that corner. We just don't want to do that with the tendons in the carpal tunnel. Okay. Let's do another little play to relax the dominant arm. And for this, you'll need to lean on your elbow on the table. So you can either lean on your elbow and put a lot of weight on it, or it can touch the table and just support. So it doesn't need to touch your face necessarily and have it loose. Okay. And while you're doing that, slowly erect and soften your hand. Yep. And you can look at it as you do it. And begin to imagine that it's like this soft wind blows up and then it floats down. It's just this lovely up and float. And I can't, just because of the way I'm going, I can see some of you and not see others. Notice if you're taking your hand way back here, that's further than you have to. Just to a neutral, which is just still a little bent. That overachiever in us of like, I want to see how far I can go. This is about finding comfort in there. And then rotate your hand a little bit in one direction or the other, doesn't matter, and do the same thing. Just these little rotations. Each time you do it, you're at a slightly different angle. And feel how your low back helps. That there's a way, if you arch your low back a little, it's easier to straighten the fingers. And when you relax and kind of slump down, it's easier for them to go down. All right, rest. And see how your shoulder's doing, how your hand's feeling. And we're going to do a little bit more mapping of the parts of the shoulder. So find your sternum, the notch in your sternum, and find your collarbone. And your collarbone, I like to use the opposite hand to find the collarbone. And the thumb can sit in the notch in the sternum, right at the top of the sternum. And then the two fingers are like scissors, and they go alongside the collarbone to feel its shape. It's a really interesting shape, isn't it? It's not a straight line bone. It's quite curvy. And it goes all the way to this bone that you feel right at the top of your shoulder. It's like a cap over the socket in the arm. Go ahead and shrug your shoulder up and down. It's a good time to put the thumb right on the joint and then these fingers on the shoulder. And feel how that collarbone moves up and down. Yeah. This is a joint we're not used to sensing, right? And now move your shoulder a little forward and feel how this joint has to work to come forward. Sometimes when people feel like their shoulder's frozen, it's because this joint isn't doing what it's supposed to. Now, for those of you who have, like, your shoulder is actively sore and bugging you, you can do just a tiny movement, like almost just like a breath, a whisper, of just enough to feel that bone moves a little bit. And when you move it, see if your upper arm bone, as it comes forward, if there's a way that your upper arm bone rotates so your thumb goes more in. And as you take that bone back, begin to take it back a little bit further, and your upper arm bone begins to rotate out. So that the rotation of the arm is partly determined by the movements of this collarbone. Rest your arm on your leg. Put your fingers back on your collarbone, the other hand on this collarbone. And now take your shoulder in a tiny little circle. If there was a clock right here, it would be a wristwatch. And you're tracing around the edges of the wristwatch circular dial with that part of you. And feel how your collarbone moves to do that circle. With this little bit of rotation of your arm, it's just a very interesting movement. If it was a straight bone, it would be inscribing like an ice cream cone on its side. But it has a little different shape when you add in that little rotation of the arm. Go the other direction a few times. Okay. Now, bring your shoulder blade back towards your spine. And you'll feel now your collarbone has to go backward to do that. Now, shoulder blades can be a hard to imagine thing because they're in back of us, right? We don't see them. So you could reach under your armpit, and right under there, that's the front edge of your shoulder blade. And if you put your arm straight in front of you and pull forward with the arm like you're trying to reach into the computer, you'll feel that shoulder blade come forward into your fingers under there. And then when you pull your arm back, the shoulder blade retreats on your back. It's a triangular bone. I think of it like an abalone shell. It's smooth on the inside and it slides over your rib cage. And in order to get it to slide back, the ribs have to compress back there and kind of move out of the way. And I find that chest forward, belly forward lets that sliding happen. So let's go back to a movement we did earlier in the week of pulling your belly in and looking down. And then pushing your belly out, taking your sit bones behind you and pushing your chest forward. Back and forth like that a few times. Paying attention to the ribs that are right underneath your shoulder blades, so the upper ribs in the back. Feel how they spread out when you look down, and they squeeze together when you look up. So many of us who have spent a lot of time at the computer have a posture where we're curled a little bit forward in the shoulder, and it's like the whole arm the three bones that make up the arm hang a little too far forward. That puts a lot of stress on the vertebrae right around the lump in the back of your neck, and that's where the nerves come out that go down to your arm. So if you're having trouble with things falling asleep, it's often because this curling is a little bit forward. So this idea that you can take these three bones, kind of lift them up and over and let them settle there. It's a subtle difference in what you're doing with the ribs underneath. So take your dominant hand behind your back, the palm of your hand to your back, and just gently see where you can easily reach. Again, no stretching, no straining, but it's like you're just giving yourself a light back rub with your hand. And then take that dominant hand and put it in the back corner of your chair. So you're not leaning on it, but you're supported by it. And in that place, arch and look up, feeling what your shoulder blade does, and then round and look down and feel what the shoulder blade does. And experiment with where your eyes look. What direction can you put your eyes to feel your shoulder blade most clearly? And rest. And then put your hand behind your back and see where you can reach. Again, being gentle and easy with yourself. With your other hand, you could find your fingers if your fingers go far enough to reach. And just say hello to them. Just acknowledge that they're there. And undo. And see after that little play where your shoulder is sitting on your body. If there's a sense that those three bones are more balanced over the rib cage on that side. Like you don't have, you can, a lot of times teachers will say, dial your shoulders back. But it's a lot of work to hold them there. And see if it's just a little more effortless after that play to keep that one back. And let's do the other arm. So first, the back of your palm to your back. See where you can easily reach. You could try a little gentle turning your fingers up or down while they're back there. Staying comfortable, no goals. And pause. Put your arm gently resting on the back corner of your chair. And arch and round a few times. Again, going, where can you look with your head and eyes that you can feel your shoulder blade? You can feel the ribs getting out from under the shoulder blade so it can move more. And rest. Take your hand behind you. See if it got a little easier. And let's play a little bit. We didn't play with this shoulder with the putting your fingers on your collarbone, and sensing your collarbone moving up and down. And taking your shoulder backward and forward and feeling it move forward and the collarbone move. And find the rotation that can go with that, that your thumb can roll in as your collarbone goes forward, and your thumb can roll out as your collarbone goes backward. Okay, rest for a moment. Fingers back on this collarbone. And do some little circles. Do the smallest circle you could do, so that if you were in a class with a bunch of students and you were doing this circle, they wouldn't know you were doing it. It's almost just in your imagination you're circling. And go the other way. And see if with this tiny little movement you can still feel the rotation in the upper arm bone, and that the ribs underneath do something to allow this movement to happen. And then let's do the biggest circle you could. And this biggest circle you could, use your sit bones, use your feet, use everything you've got. I have this image that this is my collarbone, and as I do that circle, it's drawing a circle on my wall as big as it can. And I think this purple thing illustrates a principle of the joint, which is that a tiny movement at this end makes a big motion at the other end. So having mobility right in here is critical for the shoulders. Now let's talk about the ribs underneath for a moment. With this side, find your sternum, and then right next to your sternum, you'll feel a bump where each rib comes in and a groove in between the ribs. And go as close to your sternum as you can get. You kind of have to feel how wide your sternum is. And with your fingers, you can put the fingers in the grooves, just lightly resting in the grooves between the bones. And then shrug your shoulder and see if those ribs are also articulating with your sternum. And you might find you have to tip your head a little bit to get the ribs to go up, and then to go down, tip your head down on that side. But this ability for all the rib joints to articulate with the sternum is part of what helps keep our shoulders happy. And again, it's a joint we just never think about. Like, have you ever thought about where your rib comes into your sternum? But knowing that it moves, if you push your chest forward, the joint's going this way. And if you pull your belly in, the joints are going that way. Kind of like the chest of a bird when you push your chest out, and the wings flapping. And they go up. Feel it on the other side for a moment, just to feel that up and down in there. All right. And close your eyes. Sense where your shoulders are with respect to how they sit on top of your ribs. One way to notice is if you imagine there was a piece of elastic, the skin in front of you is elastic from shoulder to shoulder, and from the back of the shoulder to the back of the other shoulder, are those elastics getting a little bit more even? Because dialing your shoulders back pulls the elastic in the back tight, shorter, and stretches the front. And rounding pulls the front tight and stretches the back. We're looking for the place that's in between rounding and arching, that they're relatively even. And that's the place where it's possible for the spine to be as long as it can be. So now I have another favorite, just little piece that's a quick relaxation for when you have 2 minutes between classes and you just want to do something to get your arm and shoulder more comfortable. And for this one, you need to stand up. So go ahead and stand up and find a door or a wall, someplace where there's room that you could put your hand on the door or wall. And you might be most comfortable in a door if you put your wrist in this neutral straight position to start, or you could put your palm up on a wall. And stand close enough to the wall that your arm is lightly bent, not jammed straight. And for this, it's a creativity exercise of how many ways can you move without moving your hand. So you're leaving your hand still and you're moving your body. So you could turn toward the wall or away from the wall. You could get tall or get short. You might be able to go under your hand. Your other arm could move. You could tip your head to just get as creative as you can. You could go closer to the wall. How far away from the wall could you get and still touch? Without tripping on something in your room. All right, and then just stand and let your arms hang by your side. And see if this side, the shoulder's a little more relaxed than the other. And then come and sit down. So joints are a really interesting part of human anatomy in that they don't get blood supply like our muscles do. They get their nutrients from the synovial fluid that's in the joint capsule. And if you can take a joint and move it through its whole range of motion, it gets the nutrients to the joint, it keeps the cartilage happy. And when we stop using a joint through its whole range of motion, then you don't get the nutrients to all the parts of the linings of the joint. And that's where arthritis can start to happen and be uncomfortable if there's not enough lubrication in the joint. So being able to take the joint very gently and comfortably through its whole range of motion kind of makes it feel liquid in the joint instead of crunchy. So that dancing around your arm is just a way to go through all the different aspects of the joint. So let's take a moment to review what are some of the misconceptions about your hand or your arm. What have you learned? How has your mapping shifted over the course of this hour?
I noticed that I was rotating my hand around my thumb, and now I'm way more conscious to find that middle and rotate it around the middle. And that immediately released my thumb. It was like, oh, this is really nice. It's just on for the ride, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's a pretty powerful one in terms of a long-term change in your comfort with your hands. That where is the axis? Yeah. What else, or what are the pieces you're going to take away and play with during the week?
I think it's interesting to realize how connected everything is. Like I was really surprised when I moved my fingers to see my muscles playing around up here, because it's like, oh, okay, that's where that goes. It's just like we've never really mapped where everything is connected in the body, and so this is fabulous. It's a real revelation.
Kind of a practical anatomy class that I wish I'd had as a youngster. I went to a fancy school and I majored in biology, and they didn't have a single course in human anatomy. You know, the anatomy. I remember doing my junior research project, and the article next to the one I was looking at was the anatomy of the blowfly rectum. And it's like, people study that, but why are they not studying how our own arms and hands and bodies work? That's when I decided not to become a biology researcher. I could not fathom spending my life researching something so little. I didn't have the meticulousness to do that. But it's funny how there are those little moments growing up that set the whole course of your career in life. That was one of them for me. Yeah, that there aren't muscles here. And so pain up here is tendons rubbing against things, tendons being asked to do things they're not supposed to do. And that, yeah, that it's up there.
I really
It
like
feels
that.
like,
Sorry, go ahead.
well, no, it feels like we've been carrying around this body our whole lives, and now we're getting the instruction manual on how to work it.
Mm-hmm.
Finally. Better
But
late
also
than
have
never,
to
I
see it
guess.
as a team, right? That's really something that is standing out for me. That though I've been into alternative medicine or massages or so, that if something hurts here, often it's the diagonal where really the issue is. Still, the analogy that you gave about the team versus the individual player really helped me just visualizing. A lot is visualizing it for me.
Yes.
Also this dance around my hand, I would never have thought about that gives me that movement that I need for that particular thing. I had ankle surgery, like I broke at 360, and this is something that I now feel once in a while, though I do a lot of physical therapy, still am. It's that keeping it really moving and rotating that I would need for that constant.
Dance with your foot. Put your foot on the wall and wiggle around.
Yeah, and I might just do that, yeah.
The team idea is interesting because if you've ever played a team sport like soccer or whatever, if the team isn't behaving well and passing the ball, whatever, you can't play well. Like one individual can't make it work well. But when the team is working together, that individual, it's like so delightful because you feel like you're functioning way better than you ever realized you could function because the team is working. And once your brain gets that idea of, oh, I'm a team, then even when you just move a finger, there's a little echo that goes all the way through you, and you don't hurt yourself.
But it seems with the mouse, you're always using your index finger. And after a while, that just seems to hurt the whole hand because you never use any other fingers. Is there a way to do something about that?
The most important thing for that is that your hand is in this neutral, relaxed position with the fingers draping down a little bit. But does it hurt more on the lifting the finger or the pushing down?
Well, since I haven't been using my mouse today, I'm not sure, but I think probably pushing down, I would guess. I don't know.
So you could push your index finger up and down by what you do with your sit bones and your belly. So if as you lift your finger, you arch a little, and as you press down, you pull your belly in, then your finger gets to be as light as a feather on that push. Whereas if you do the opposite, if you round your belly down as you lift your finger and you arch and push down, it's going to be harder. So I would play with how can your sit bones help your index finger?
Okay, thank you, because that's That's the problem, is the mouse after using it for 2 or 3 hours. Oh my man, the hand's really painful.
So the more that it's your sit bones, and that your sit bones move the mouse, or at least they know you're moving the mouse, and that it's the big muscles that are moving, and that little bit of flexion and extension. Every movement of the body that is an arch kind of thing needs that arch going through you. And everything that is a down needs that down as part of it. Just that little echo of that will make things easier.
Does it help to have those motion boards? I mean, standing desk once in a while and then having those motion boards that you keep moving on?
Variety is always good. The human body was not meant to sit all day. So if you have the option to be able to stand up or to play with some of those, they definitely help. But you can also just taking a couple minute break, setting your timer for every hour to get up and go dance around your arm. Give your students the 5 minutes off so that you can take care of yourself. You can say it's for them, but it's for you too. But I don't know about you, I have to set a timer if I want to do that. Because I could easily just sit and focus for 8 hours and then get up and realize, uh-oh, I haven't peed, I haven't eaten, I'm cranky. But I get so focused on what I'm doing. I think all of us like learning and whatever, that aspect of it. So use your smarts, which is, all right, if you know that you're like that, set a timer. Any other thoughts of, kind of this is wrapping up the week of classes, of the principles that, the underneath principles, or the new toys you have in your body that it's like, oh, I didn't know that was there. The one thing that no one's mentioned that I want to highlight is that idea that you can do something about it. This isn't that you have a bad neck or a bad wrist or a bad index finger or a bad mouse or a bad job, or but that the sensations when something hurts are the indicator to look for what could you do differently. It's like anxiety is a useful thing because it makes us change our behavior. You know, you wake up at night worrying about something long enough, you finally wake up one day and say, I'm going to change something here and do something different. And this class has given you some ideas of what to do different. You know, thing one, how can my sit bones help me? Thing two, how can flexion or extension help with this move, or side bending? Thing three, are my ribs moving? Am I being a team? Thing four, am I starting from my big muscles or am I starting from my little muscles? Where am I starting this motion from? Am I moving the way the joint is meant to move? And there's a website that I love, I'm going to put in the chat. It's called MoveWellAvoidInjury.com. And it has some videos of the body. And she uses this idea of the misconceptions about how we move. And it's all organized around that. And she's done some very nice, very simple videos. So I recommend taking a look at those. And then in terms of following up with this, I'm working with Tanya to continue having classes in the fall. I'm teaching in the Telos program in August and September. So there are 2 classes. The first one is called Ready for Anything, and it's having the biological fitness to be able to pop out of your chair quickly, turn in any direction, have your eyes feel free to move in any direction. And I'm talking with Peter Prescott in the Wellness Center about doing some running, hiking classes. So taking this into bigger movement activities. So there will be more options to have more of it. I do find that just having taking the occasional class, I'm hoping that we can do it as a Friday afternoon drop-in. So if you're having a bad week and you just want a refresher to get your mind back in the pattern of how do I work as a team, come and drop in and play for an hour. And
I have one more question, Irene. As you age and get to be my age, I'm the oldest one here, your nerves start to retract. It's just part of aging. Is there any way that you can do something about that?
Every Feldenkrais session that you do like this, where you are paying attention to your movements carefully, builds the connectivity between your brain and your body. And though the nerves retract, you can build your skill, and that builds the neuroplasticity. I mean, it helps things connect. So, I mean, I had one woman in my telos class who was in her 80s, had a drop foot since birth. And by doing the walking class, she was able to connect to her foot and actually not have her toe. She was able to lift the front of her foot as she was walking. It's like that capability grows. I work with people with Parkinson's all the time, and they have in addition to aging, they have the lack of dopamine, and their movements continue to improve. It's like work on building your skill, use your wisdom, and that helps you be able to communicate, and it helps keep the nerves strong. That communication in the nerves partly goes down because we don't use it. We're not paying attention to the sensations. The brain goes, not so necessary to pay attention to that. I'll just prune out that little connection. And you can rebuild it. So I would say that either take up a hobby that requires using all of your body in a different way, or find a way to do some Feldenkrais regularly, but that's the best way I know of to maintain those connections.
Yeah, well, I'm a professional musician and I play all the time. So I use my hands constantly.
What do you play?
I'm an organist.
Okay.
And so I use my hands and feet. I mean, the full organ, 3 manuals, a full pedal board. And so I'm using my hands and feet all the time. But I'm still noticing with the hands that I am losing some of that in the tips of my fingers. And I believe it's age.
And I would say that the most important thing you can do for the sensation in the tips of your fingers is work on getting more mobility up in your upper chest, so that you don't have the curvature that pinches the nerves that go down to the hands. That's the spot to work. It's not hand related, but it's up here.
Pull it back more.
Pull it back, but not by force of will pulling it back, of reminding the ribs underneath that they are mobile. And the things that I know that are great for teaching that are Feldenkrais, yoga, belly dancing.
That's what I need.
Taking a belly dancing class. One of the things that's really fascinating for a musician is to play a song, something you're really comfortable with, and then do a lesson like we did today, and then play again and feel the difference in your playing when you get the fluidity of your torso. And when you're using foot pedals and hand pedals, often people brace in the middle. It's like you hold the middle solid so that you can move the ends, but there has to be some flow back and forth in your body. I don't know, did I tell the San Francisco Symphony story? One of my teachers got hired by the San Francisco Symphony because they were having a rash of musicians going out for repetitive stress injury. And it was way higher percentage than usual. And they were like, this isn't supposed to be contagious. This isn't a virus. How is this happening? And my teacher came and observed a practice. And she said, how come all the musicians are sitting so still? And they had a guest conductor for 3 months who liked the way it looked when musicians sat still and didn't move. And once it's like, no, you got to move when you're playing. You're playing a stringed instrument. And said, okay, everybody, you're released from that. You now can move. And the repetitive stress problems went right down. So that the more you work to get your body as a team, getting your torso to support your limbs, the more your organ playing can be smooth and comfortable for forever with you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank
But
you.
you know, Carol, I'm going to check on you about the belly dancing, right?
Oh, yes, right. Yes, Ava.
And these days you can just do your belly dancing class online because then nobody has to see you. I like doing the classes and looking at that beautiful young body who's teaching it and just like imagining that that's my body. But when I imagine moving the way my teacher moves, then I actually start being able to move that way because I start rapping. It's like, oh, ribs are supposed to be able to do that? I wonder if I could find out how to make my ribs do that. All right. If anybody has questions, you come up afterwards, feel free to email me. I'm irene.pasternak@bellevuecollege.edu. And it's been a pleasure working with you. And
Same here.
Same here. We were very
Yes.
appreciative of the week.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm hoping your class comes together in fall, so I'll definitely use it.
And in the next couple of days, I'll send out an email that will have the link to all 4 of this week's classes and a little handout that you can print out and leave on your desk when it's like, now, what was that? I need an idea for my eyes, or I need an idea for my hands.
Right. I
That's
appreciate
right.
that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye,
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.